It's been 3 days since Miss Duzler brought her husband here to die in dressing room 3. He's the reason we're putting on this play in a hurry. It's my job to finish the scenery murals for the Island of Magic. Everybody says that The Tempest is an impossible comedy to stage, so why bother? But I painted my way into the place, and now I believe. 3 nights ago, as play practice wrapped up, and I was soothing out the darkest blue sky in the night, Ms. D came up to me. "Tess," she said, "you take care of Mr. Duzler until he falls asleep." I've been here at the Duzler's place a year, 3 theater seasons, a year of free paint and canvases, muffins and juice at weekends practices, and the building's warm enough to sleep in. "Yes, ma'am," I said. I was going to guard the king of the Queen City Playhouse. Their daughter, Kara Duzler, I know her from school. We're not friends, but she caught me painting in the back of the art room when I was supposed to be in other classes, and she knew I wasn't about to do murals for the school drama club. She was the star in all her parents' plays, and she told her mom I could help. Like I say, I'm scenery. There's audio ladies, Sky Boys on lights, and Joe, he's on costumes. Sometimes he helps me paint, and I help him sew. There's the cast, the King's Men, the Boatmen, Caliban the monster, and then there's Miranda and her father, Prospero the magician, with his invisible spirits, nymphs, and reapers. Miss Duzler directs us from all her headsets. I never know how to take her. One way is a lioness on the headset, roaring out stage directions, pawing at my pine forest of my London street scenes, my emerald cities. Another way is sweet Ms. D. Roy brings the muffins. He's a rich bachelor who plays the hero in most of the shows, burning under the lights while the female lead crosses her arms and schemes and offs with her heads. Well, this play, he's Prospero. Kara plays Miranda, Prospero's daughter, stranded on the island and hypnotized by his tall tales about their royal heritage. But once Prospero takes off his magic robe, ladies and gentlemen, we see right through him. Only Miranda's quick marriage to some gullible prince will make her father the duke again. It takes a lot of tricks to pull it off. Tonight at practice, we're T-minus 2 days until opening night. Skyboy rattles along the lighting catwalks. By the time I look up to see, I see the tail end of a shadow disappear behind a spotlight. Wow, would I like that post? Sky Girl, how about that? Instead, I'm down on the stage where I paint and listen to the actors. "Do you swear in front of God and family?" they say in their fake preacher collars. "Do you come by the name of the king?" they shout to intruders. The cast job is to promise, protect, or poison. Joe and Skyboy and me make it all look convincing. I'm almost done touching up the sets. This here is where Prospero's slave, Ariel, will lay out bait for the drunken sailors, and over here, when Caliban is plotting to kill Prospero, he will get a little flighty and say his island is all sweet noises. When the play practice begins tonight, the actors' voices start as very clear arrangement of words. And by the middle of practice, once I am deep into the island of magic, the actors are a nest of buzzing bees. The only sound I hear is the brushes clinking against the paint jars. Jangling keys yank me out of my painting. I look behind me where Miss D holds her keys above her head and barks out one last order before she lets everybody go on break. But since this is last season, it's like she's been struck by lightning. Her hair went from a mop of normal person brown hair to a pad of white bristles. "Let me say this once," she says. "And only once. Please, please, please put a name sticker on your cubby. At home, please sew your initials into each piece of your costume." She sighs, and her whole body deflates. "And be here on time for dress rehearsal." Then Kara's voice comes through the speakers. She and Roy are backstage already, and she must not have switched off the microphone. "Oh, Father," she says, and then she slips off script. Oh, Prospero, may I pluck the magic garment from thee? Miss Doozler's got another daughter, older than Kara. Well, she knows how to shoo away an old dog like Roy, but instead of scolding Kara for wandering off with a 35-year-old amateur actor, Miss D interrupts her own speech to the cast and listens to her daughter lip smack. When rehearsal starts up again, Ferdinand, who is played by a total geezer, tells Miranda he will marry her. Their swift ceremony will make Miranda the next Queen of Naples, and it will put her father, Prospero, the wronged Duke of Milan, back into royalty. Miss D stops them and talks about the spectacle this act will need. She touches her headset and asks the Skyboy if he's ready to create the invisible spirit effect. I don't hear him answer, but I know he's ready because he's got filters on some lights, cut out shapes on others, all whacked out to crazy angles. Like he controls the spectacle. Sometimes during practice, he sits on the catwalk above the audio control deck, and I watch his dangling feet. I've never seen his face before, but I've heard he's older than I am. Miss D's headset shorts out, and though the auditorium, someone yells, "What?" And I realize it's Skyboy. I've never heard his voice before. Well, it's higher than I imagined. The audio ladies are still on break, so Miss D says, Tess, fix me. I wrap some electrical tape around the wire. I play with the buttons. It works for a while, and then the battery dies. Get it together, Mom, Carrie says. During the break, me and Joe go downstairs to check on Mr. D. Joe follows one step behind, babbling about how Shakespeare was a fool for writing such impossible plays and for gathering people in his theaters in the first place. All it did was spread the plague, he said. I want to defend Shakespeare, but I won't fight Joe. I need to show my thanks to him. If he weren't here, I would have split after a week. I could run this show in my sleep, he says. All of us could. I'm going to pop him for saying this, but he's right. I've seen him stand backstage with sewing pins falling out of one side of his mouth, and every character's line streaming out the other side. Even a good punch wouldn't change Joe. Once he gets an idea, it imprints itself onto him for good, just like the actor's scripts. When we enter dressing room 3, Mr. D's deck of cards waits on his table. He can't play games anymore, but he likes to touch the cards. He slides a 4 and an ace next to each other and then points himself. 41, I say? That's how old you are? He blinks. It's when he works as hard to hide his suffering that it shows the most. No way, Mr. D, Joe says. You look like Noah. Mr. D shuffles the cards real slow and smiles. He's a little in love with Joe. We all are. A stench tells us it's time to change the bedpan, and I reach for Mr. D. I got it, Tess, Joe says. He lifts Mr. D out of the way. His strength surprises me, and I notice his shoulders are starting to fill out his jacket. He's 19 and still waiting for a growth spurt. Maybe it's finally here. I don't want to embarrass Mr. D, so I look away, up to the photos on the wall that show the work of a bigger man, the old Mr. D. These snapshots of actors remind me that he staged plays nobody else in this part of Cincinnati would dare, like The Crucible and A Raisin in the Sun, or not just Our Town and My Fair Lady. He helped actors much more talented than Kara rise up, all the way to Chicago theaters, some of them. And Kara has no plans herself. She'll take over this playhouse, direct and star in her own productions until someone discovers her. Then she'll sell the place or dump it into some cousin and let it go to seed. Joe's auburn curls bounce as he finishes up the cleanup, and Mr. Doozler nods a little to thank him. He says he wants to take a turn giving Mr. D his meds. I okay it and let Joe find the right bottle from the cabinet. He helps the pills down the hatch and Mr. D's eyelids droop. Joe waves me outside. He looks at me square, his freckles blazing in the hall light. For the first time, I notice that he's a little taller than me. One of those pills, T, he says, just one, is instant dynamite. He rubs imaginary money together between his fingers. $30 a dose, what do you say? We could make a killing. I walk away. This is the worst idea yet, and yet I can't let it press into him. I want to find Prospero's magic staff and cast the demons out of Joe, but he grabs my arm. Kids at school pay $30 to keep a pipe full at night. I try to shake out of his grip, but he's too strong. I'm no dummy. I watch them pass it around at the parties I sneak into after Kara and her friends have crashed out, where I fill my pockets with smashed up potato chips and drink from half-empty cups. We'll wait till he kicks, Joe says. We'll sell the leftovers, give a cut to Miss D, no harm. You are sick, I say. Joe lets go and skips past me up the stairs. A killing! I go sit in the director's chair next to Mr. D's bed. He settles into a night's sleep. A snore, a wheeze, a twitching around the eye. When the door opens, he doesn't wake. Ms. D walks in and kisses him on the forehead. Ice cold, she said. Shouldn't be long now, Tess. She usually looks dried up, a new wrinkle each night, like it's her brain swelling and contracting instead of his. But tonight her face is relaxed. She knows she can't control when or how her hero falls. She takes a few grand strides around the room, her eyes scanning the photos. James always wanted to put on the Tempest, she says. This is our last chance. Do you think we can pull it off? I think he'll know, even from down here, what we're doing up there on stage, I say. I want to tell her he'll be with us in spirit, but it might comfort her that she stopped listening. Instead, she's fixated on one particular photo, the one where Kara wears a red curly wig and belts out, "Tomorrow!" So you'll turn out the lights when you go, she says. Of course. Miss Doozler leaves. Just as the click of her heels fades down the hall, the volume of them creeps up again. Tess, her face says in the doorway now. Yeah? You sure your ride will be here by 9? Yep, 1:45. Miss D checks her watch. Perfect. Mr. Doozler is usually out by 8:15. Since I started looking after Mr. D, Ms. D stops jumping on my back about washing and cutting my hair and wearing all proper black fat-stained shoes, so I stopped stealing money from her purse for haircuts. And I painted over the yellow and orange splatters on my shoes with black. But we still keep up this charade, as if I've got somewhere else to go and somebody else to take me there. Now, with the hall light behind her, Miss Doozler's light brush cuts glow. If she'd let me, I'd do her portrait as a fresco on the wall right here next to Mr. D. It's been a while since Ms. D gave up asking me to make a small painting, but maybe a still life of flowers, or go for a ride with her so I could hand it over to a guard visiting hours or set it on a gravestone. That's what a good daughter should do, she said. You know, Tess, she says now, once you get your rear end back in school, you could keep going. I mean, past high school and get a job in an old folks' home. That's the wave of the future. Well, Mr. D isn't old, I want to say, but I shouldn't remind her of it. So I say, the future? And she tries to smile and it fails. So she leaves again without saying goodbye. She's too busy to talk to me. She pushed up the date of opening night, and folks all over town swore they'd come. They all know it's the last curtain call for James Doozler. If I did show up at school again, I'd see Kara sitting on the front where I should be sitting during third period psych class. Well, she passes quizzes behind her over my empty seat and threw my ghost to the stoner in the back who used to gnaw at my mats and my hair with his pocket knife. I know she's still going to psych class because her backpack down in dressing room 4 is loaded with notes about synopsis and biofeedback, turning forks into drooling dogs. Before I quit school, I listened good enough in psych class to know that Kara is having some serious synopsis activity every night in dressing room 4. At the end of the hall, past the trapdoor, where the passage narrows and the ceiling stoops, In there with Roy, her pleasure centers must have lit right up. Her primal cortex kicked into overdrive. All that sensory stimuli from Roy with its positive reinforcement system in place made her return each night through the maze of backstage prop room and light controls, past the decaying smell of her father in dressing room 3, which would have stimulated a negative response she would have had to suppress. Roy would help her with that. He makes the serotonin flow. Around 10 o'clock, Joe walks into Mr. D's room. He's been upstairs with Prospero's robe, and he needs my help stitching up loose threads in the lining and around the collar. So we set to work on a big table out in the hall and listen to Kara argue with Roy in room 4. Something about going home. Once the robe is perfect again, me and Joe carry it to their door. Roy invites us all the way in. He's just as wrinkled and balding as Mr. D, even though Mr. D is the one dying faster. In this light, Roy is all bone and shadow. I want to grab the stage makeup at the vanity and brighten him. When Joe skips the robe over Roy's shoulder, Roy stands straight as a show dog. He gives Joe a secret look. Joe's face lights up. Roy is working some kind of magic on him, too. The robe is fine for now, so Roy keeps it on and returns to the couch. Kara lights a cigarette and hands it to me. Joe doesn't smoke, so she lights 2 more and carries one to Roy and sits on his lap. Roy's free hand massages her thigh, so I watch his smoking hand. The nails are all pointed and yellow. Kara leans away from him and gives me a wide-eyed expression she usually saves for the stage. Does she want protection from this monster? Well, my mom's out to prove something, she says. With all that invisible shit in Shakespeare's script that she's trying to bring back to life, she falls back into Roy's arms. No one can follow that. She runs her foot up Roy's legs until it disappears under the robe. Honestly, Tess, do you really think we can make these spirits fly? Kara wants me to indulge her. She is starting this dumb conversation instead of talking about how her old man's ready to kick it. So she'll want to hear anything that I tell her. I'm stupid about flying, I say. Roy laughs. His free hand slides up Kara's leg and then touches her chin. See, Tess agrees with you, he says. His job is to keep the illusion alive. Kara rests her head on Roy's shoulder. Oh. You need a bath, he says. You're burning up. Time to go home. He looks at me and puts on his Prospero grin. Our little life is rounded with a sleep. Joe nudges me. Yeah, tea. Our ride's probably here too. Everyone says goodnight, and I leave quick so they don't see me slip into dressing room 3. In the dark, Mr. D's fingertips glow white from bad circulation. He has finished the glass of water it takes him all day to drink. He rocks and sways in his bed. He must be under already, in a real deep sleep. After all the treatments and useless brain surgeries and gray matter melted down into the dark sea, and now he's ready for the tidal wave. When the doctors told Miss D that her husband had 2 weeks left, she asked Kara to step down into a minor role in the play so she'd have more time to help out at home. But Kara's not the helping type. I will be the daughter that Kara isn't. I will guide Mr. D into the night. And after all Mr. and Mrs. D have done for me, all the blankets and paints, the dinner invitations I turned down, and the leftovers they always bring to the theater the next day, all the silence and space they offer me here, I owe it to them. I take inventory of the meds in the cabinet. There's the nausea stuff, the blood pressure stuff, and some drugs I had to memorize for the last psych test I took. Pills for depression, for seizures, for pain. Miss D has arranged them into 2 rows according to their sedation speed. Fast, like the instant knockout tabs Joe wants to get his hands on, and slow pills, which don't do much unless you wash them all down at once. I count what's left. 10 days worth of each. I think of all surrendering them to Joe. I wouldn't accept any money from him, but at least somebody would benefit from these. They're not doing much here. Besides, maybe Mr. D wants to stop taking his meds and make his death more tragic. No. I stuff the pills into their bottles, shut the cabinet, and curl up on the floor at the foot of the bed. The next day is the final dress rehearsal. My work is done, so I sit in the front row, all of the seats, and watch the play fall apart. Kara is out with the flu. Ms. D asked Joe to play the female lead. For a few lines, he has a good time mocking the way Kara plays Miranda, all nose in the air. It doesn't take long to see that Joe sucks as a girl, and Miss D yells out, "Tess, step in!" Kara brought me into this place. I'm not dumb enough to think we're friends, but I thought maybe we were something else, like some kind of people that got to pull up with each other. Everybody's putting up with her, and she's not doing a thing for us. The Miranda costume won't fit me, I say. Not my problem, Miss D says. Somebody's got to play the part. Joe flips open Roy's robe to show me the lining where he stitched. No sweat, he says. There's extra in here. He will add a panel to the seams of Kara's costume. He'll cover my butt with strips of the magic garment. I hop on stage. I yank the Miranda wig off of Joe's head, and his hair springs free. I pull the wig onto my head and kneel in the same spot Joe gets up from. Roy sways as he begins Prospero's confession to Miranda. "'Tis time I should inform thee, father. Lend me back." And as he takes the robe off, he barfs. And it splashes all over my shoes. The guy who plays the slave, Spirit Ariel, stomps his foot. "Oh, perfect! Roy's got the bug too. Who's going to play the male lead now?" Miss D lifts her clipboard over her head and tells him to shut up. I know what she's thinking. This play is going to the dogs, and Mr. D deserves better. "This is community theater," Ariel says. "It's not like we have understudies." "Fine," Miss D says. Joe, step in and play Prospero. She holds out a script for him. Joe doesn't mouth off or question the order. He takes the script with both hands. "I feel like shit too," the spirit Juno says. He touches his forehead. "I'm in no shape to protect my body from Caliban." "Yeah," one of the Reapers says. "I could hurl at any minute." "I don't care how you feel," Miss D tells them. "You are all supposed to be invisible anyway." Joe balances the robe on his arm like a cartoon waiter in a white towel. With the same arm, he holds out the script, even though he doesn't need it. "Lie there, my art. Wipe thou thine eyes, have comfort," he says. When he's done buttering me up for the big announcement, I say, "You have often begun to tell me what I am, but stopped and left me to a bootless inquisition." He puffs up his chest and belts out Prospero's next line, asking me, "Canst thou remember a time before we came into the cell?" I tell him yes. I recall my noble life before our exile to the island, rather like a dream. "Not bad," Miss D says. "Keep going, let's finish this act and then jump to Act 3. I will, with you and Ferdinand, the real test." Joe pulls on Prospero's wig. Then sleeve by collar, he dons the magic robe. We sail through a full scene. Joe comes alive, his sleeves flap when he gestures. The hem spreads around him when he kneels in front of me and says, "Dear daughter." Soon it's time for Act 3, when Prospero performs his biggest trick. Ferdinand defends Prospero's honor, and then Joe wields Prospero's magic staff and draws the circle where his enemies will stand and fall under his spell. This is where the daughter will secure their future. Tonight, Mr. D really suffers. Hot, cold, hot, sweating and writhing. I think he's caught the bug. I place another blanket over him up to his neck, and then I sit up real straight on the director's chair next to the bed. I tilt my head all the way back like heroes do when they appeal to the gods or curse them. "Keep going," I say, and I fluff the pillows. I change the channel on the silent TV. Mr. D still grinds his teeth and squirms. I cannot comfort him. When Joe walks in, he's wearing only a thin white t-shirt under his jacket. Even though winter is settling in, but I don't question it, he sits in the chair on Mr. D's other side and he hands me my script. We rehearse Act 3. When I step out to go to the bathroom, I hear Joe walk across the room, and I tiptoe back and peek in. I see Joe's shadow first, cast against the wall next to Mr. D. His hair hangs over his eyes, and he hunches over, reaching into his coat like a magician, tucking away tricks and coins or rabbits. He's standing at the cabinet. I storm in, swat at his hand, and yank his jacket off. And there he is in his thin shirt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is where we see right through the magician to the liar and the thief, trickster and monster at once. I pull the pill bottles out of his jacket pockets and drop the jacket to the floor. Mr. D is not dead yet, I say. Some nerve you've got. Close enough, Joe says. His face is red, and so is his neck and his chest, all the way down to his collar. What good are those going to do now? He places his hand on my shoulder. Stop pretending, Tess. Just let him go. After Joe leaves, I stay in the chair a long time because who can sleep now? I hold Mr. D's hand and recite all my lines with Kara's lines over him from the parts of the play where the magic cloak is still in the place and the illusions are still alive. Your tale, sir, would cure deafness. For a score of kingdoms you should wrangle, and I would call it fair play. His breathing slows and his hand goes limp in mine. I keep going. How many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is. A brave new world has such people in it. When I wake up the next morning, I know what I must do. First, I pour all of his slow pills onto a plate, and I mash them up at the bottom of his water glass. I fill the glass at the sink. I spoon the powder and hold it over his drink, and it will take him all day to finish. Just stir it in, I think. In my hand, the spoonful of magic dust stays suspended above the water for a very long time. If I don't do this, Joe will do something worse. If I flush the medicine, Mr. D will suffer more without it. How much more promising and protecting can I do? Now it's a matter of choosing the speed of his departure. Just stir. This is when the damn tears come. I close my eyes to get rid of them, and I just imagine those sketch pad-sized painting I made for my own parents. I stayed up nights getting those crocuses and doves and starry night skies just right, and for what? I open my eyes and I look up at the photos of the Duslers and have everything they've done in this place, all the comedy and tragedy they've given to the community instead of each other. Get it together, Tess, I say, mocking Kara. Fix this family. Mr. D grunts in his sleep, and then his face relaxes like maybe death isn't so painful at all. But I flip my wrist, and it goes, shh. I watch each white pit sink, and then as I stir, the spoon clinks against the glass. In the moments before the opening night performance began, the sound from the audience swells. I pick out single voices, a lady explaining the flu that knocked out the star members of the cast, some guy going on about sailing, a kid whining for concessions in the bathroom. But when I skim over the script one last time, the crowd's voices blend together, and it's like I'm holding a seashell up to my ear, and the voices are what's inside that loud shh. Sitting still on the beach before a storm washes over the island of magic. Act 1 begins. In my ears, the men on the troubled ship are just more hush from a seashell until Prospero's brother Antonio says, "Let all sink with the king." And then I go dizzy, and soon I'm under the lights and my tongue goes thick, and I think of Skyboy, and he's got some kind of hold on me for sure, but Joe must be evoking the invisible spirits to calm me, because one look from him forgives every theft and broken promise, every bit of poison. It rights me. Soon I'm belting out my favorite line. The ill spirit have so fair a house, good things strive to dwell with it. And I'm ready. Me and Joe deliver every line just as good as we did for Mr. D. From poisoning Ariel, promising Ariel his freedom, to dodging Caliban, to sweet-talking Ferdinand, until Joe's got everyone where he wants them, protected in Prospero's magic coat. The spotlight swings on my way, it heats me up. Alfonso, king of Naples, marries me to his son. Do you promise to love and honor Ferdinand, he says. I do, I say, in the name of the Father. And now I am officially a part of this royal family, which makes Joe a right duke once again, and me a princess. Applause fills the theater, and this is when the spirit leaves us.